What's happening, good people? So I wanted to jump on here to talk about comms, communication. Communication has always been very important to me. Even though I don't necessarily talk to a lot of people, I like to be able to talk to the people that I like to talk to. And I went on this idea of being into GMRS. Actually, I had a conversation on Ria's Shack Ham Radio. We sat down and we chatted, and I never was compelled to really get into a ham radio. It seemed like really intense. The testing, the equipment, but I never could quite get into that. So where I landed was FRS radios. I have owned walkie-talkies before. My first pair of walkie-talkies, I bought them from Radio Shack. They were some super slim joints. I was probably like 17. And my friends lived close by, so we would use them to communicate in some capacity or another. I wish I still had those things, but Hurricane Katrina said she wanted them, so she got them. She won. You know what I mean? So I landed on the T600 series because it was one of the most feature-rich ones from a brand that I was familiar with that I felt like I could trust. Now, this particular one is the T600. It's rechargeable, it's waterproof, it has a light on the bottom, it has relatively decent range for an FRS radio. As you can see, it's pretty big. It's freaking huge. The range on this is not great. These walkie-talkie radios, they'll advertise long range up to 36 miles. But for most people, that's not going to be the case. I don't think anybody's going to get 36 miles, point blank, period. But what you can expect in the city is maybe about half a mile, realistically. Maybe even a quarter of a mile. Let me give you guys the reason why I like these so much, some of the reasons why I purchased them and deploy them. So my wife and I, she'll take the kids for a walk or something like that. And I like to be able to have quick access to her. Also, when we travel, let's say we're staying in a hotel, she has to go out to the car for something, or she may run out to get us some food, or I have to go out to the car or something. I may have to run out to get us some food. I want to be able to have quick communication with my wife instead of what we normally use, which is Telegram. It's like, babe, somebody's harassing me. Can you come down? It's like, or babe, somebody's harassing me. Wait for the phone to ring. I'm having a problem. I need help. Come down, help me out, blah, 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 so on and so forth. So walkie-talkies give you an instant communication. The speaker, it comes out loud. So I was really into that when we're on the road, or she has to run into somewhere. If we happen to have any type of situation where, cell phone service is not working, our phones are not working for some reason, we have an alternative way to communicate. They work off of line of sight, and things that are in between you and line of sight impede their ability to talk to each other. You can kind of get by through like a tree or something like that. But the range on this is just not fantastic, but I didn't expect it to be. It's for short range communication. My expectations were being managed very well. What I eventually moved on to was these two styles of radios. They're the same thing. FRS radios. This is the Midland something or another. These don't charge over USB. These do charge over micro USB. It's not USB-C. It is what it is. I really like these. So they're a lot smaller. They're a lot easier for me to give one away to my wife, and she doesn't kind of mind carrying them. She feels inconvenienced by it sometimes, but it's very rare, very, very rare that she feels inconvenienced by carrying these. Maybe we go to a mall or something like that, and she's in there. It doesn't work. The range is not perfect at a mall, but it works. If something were to happen, an emergency situation, we have another means of communication. You know what I mean? Because if you're in a situation and there is an emergency that is localized to your area, the cell phone towers can only handle so much capacity. And what happens when an emergency happens? People start to call and try to reach their loved ones. It's always ideal to text first because text is a lot less data. So you can typically get text messages more easily than you can get a phone call to go through. Just a little bit of tidbit of information in case you guys didn't know that. So what happens is FRS is free to use, the family radio service, which is your normal walkie-talkies. GMRS, you need a license. Ham, you need a license, and you need to take a test to get that license. And I think that there's levels to being a ham. And another reason why I didn't jump to GMRS when I was first interested in it is there was some rumors of the FCC dropping the price from $70 to 35. That has since happened. It happened some time ago, maybe in the last like 1 or 2 years. The license is similar to like a fishing license. You just have to go and buy a license, then you're able to transmit on GMRS. The FCC site is a mess. It's kind of hard to, you can't just jump in as with the government. They don't necessarily do that well. You can't jump in and do it easily. So there was some caution there. And the walkie talkies have served me well for my purposes. So I'm watching all of these videos. And basically, what I went through is this idea of like, okay, what are the top radios? What's the top 10 cheapest, best, fancy, 2023, 2024, 2022. So I'm watching all of these channels. Long story, really short, because it was a lot of work. I landed on this company called TID Radio, and they had an H8 model. This TID radio, or TID radio, as some people say, it is H8. And I'm going to just cut to the chase as it relates to how this one, like, really impacted me. Basically, it had USB-C charging. It had the ability to be programmed via Bluetooth, which is really rare in these radios. These radios typically have something where they'll have their own software, or they'll have the ability to work with this open source software called Chirp. So Chirp is like, I guess it's somebody developed it, as with all software, but it's very like community based and community driven. This one piece of software will work for all of those that it works for. It doesn't always work for everything. Now, what I did land on is this particular one, which is like the little brother of the H8, and it's called the TID H3. Now, the difference between FRS and GMRS is that they have these detachable antennas, and these antennas are stronger than what you would get on your typical FRS radio. If you look at the difference in the antenna, it's pretty substantial. And these transmit at about 0.5 to 2 watts. This can transmit at 5 watts. So it's a much stronger radio with a much better antenna. This is not necessarily a great antenna. This is considered basic. You can have an antenna that's probably about, let me see if I can get this in the frame. It may be about that long or a little bit longer to get good range out of this. Let's talk about range just a little bit. I was excited about the fact because people were saying that with these radios with a better antenna than this, you could get like, they would say like 6 miles. 6 miles is crazy. Remember, the FRS radios get you like a couple blocks, basically. You maybe get like 5, 6 blocks out of it in the city. Now, they said 6 miles, and they were pretty much talking about not having a whole lot of elevation and, obstacles in between and things like that. So I'm just like, man, if I could get like a mile, a legit mile, or if I could get more than a mile with these kind of radios, that's freaking fantastic. And look at the size of this thing. The only thing you got to worry about is the longer antenna. The antenna can probably get maybe about that long for the one that's popular that a lot of people like. This joint is the same size as this joint and this joint. And it's so much more capable than all of them. I'm super gleeful that I was able to find something that was this small and can do the things that it can do. These radios, they transmit on the same channels as FRS, which is channels like 1 through 22 or something like that. There's some differences in the channels. I think like 1 through 8 is high power and like 9 through 14 is low power. And you can use these with FRS radios, which was another plus. I got 6 FRS radios or normal walkie-talkies. I can actually still talk with those from these. Now, they won't have the range that I have, but if my wife is around and let's say I'm licensed and she's moving around the neighborhood and I haven't purchased a radio for her yet, she's still within the 4 to 5 blocks, me and her can still talk with these radios, which I think is fantastic. So something about that call sign that is interesting. They assign you one for anybody who uses it in your family. The thing that I don't like, I really don't like this, is you have to announce your call sign They typically say like during your transmission or at the, I think the general consensus is that you end your transmission with your call sign, and they say or every 15 minutes. 6 miles is bananas. And there's repeaters. So in our area, and in most people's area, you'll have these repeaters that you connect to. Now that stuff gets interesting. It was a lot more complicated on the Baofeng radios, but on these radios with the ability to program via Bluetooth, I think I saw a reviewer said that in the app you can actually see where your repeaters are from the app, and then you could take that information from the app and then send it over to your radio via Bluetooth, because this joint has Bluetooth in it. So it can be programmed wirelessly. I think that that's dope. I don't even have to like look up and see, well, okay, do I have repeaters in my area? The app will show me, hopefully, who knows, but the ability to do it is pretty cool. With the repeaters, how that typically works is it'll take, and if you're in the tech sphere or you think about wireless networks and things like that, it basically takes the signal and then repeats it and sends it out again. Repeaters are typically installed in places where they can be relatively high up, which increases line of sight. It's kind of like a cell phone tower. We don't have issues with connecting the cell phone towers because they're high up. It's the same thing with repeaters. They're typically high up. You can program your radio to connect to that tower. Because that tower is high up, its range is drastically increased. So people have talked about, repeaters giving you the ability to reach up to like 60, 70 miles away. That's mind boggling to me. With a product that you only pay $35 for, and it covers you and your immediate family for 10 years. You ain't got to study, you ain't got to take those tests. Now, ham radios, the stuff that those folks can do is very technical, and you could reach people in other countries and all kind of stuff, but you got to take that test, you got to study for it. It is not particularly complicated, like anything kind of basic. They just want you to be an educated user as it relates to those things, so that ultimately you don't mess stuff up. Because you'll want to be interfering with communication devices and things like that, because it's all radio waves and megahertz and all that jazz. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can cause a problem, which is why ham radio requires some knowledge. Here's the interesting thing about all of this. If you're not as picky as me, you could buy any radio. I advise you guys to all look into this and to consider it as a serious option as a part of your preparedness.